Here tonight, but a lot has changed in a couple of weeks, Rob. You talked, or your LBJ, Woody's LBJ, talks of the great uncertainty of the times in which he reigned. There seems to be a great uncertainty that's descended upon our country since last Tuesday. What do you want people to derive from this film now, in what seems to be a Trump era?
Well, first of all, I want to just hear one word from Linda Robb. I just want to hear. Was it okay?
Yes, it was okay.
Before you answer my question, will you tell the story about Princess Diana in London? Is that apropos?
Yeah. I mean, we screened When Harry Met Sally there, and we're sitting there. It's a royal premiere and all this, and I'm sitting here, and Billy Crystal's here, and Princess Di is here, and all the time I'm watching the film, I'm thinking, oh, this scene's going to come. How is she going to react to that? Now, I was thinking all of that when we're watching the film, what was going through your head, and there comes the scene where Meg Ryan fakes the orgasm, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how's this going to go over? And the place went crazy, and she turned to Billy at one point, and she said, I'd be laughing a lot more, but I know they're looking at me. But to get to your question, we need more strong men like Lyndon Johnson in this town to see us through what's going on now. I mean, it's almost surreal that the first African American president would be followed by somebody who's supported by the KKK. But it's two steps forward, one step back. But in order to move the next step forward, we need fighters. We need people who are not going to lay down. And what I learned about Lyndon Johnson, and I was a child of the '60s, so when I was a kid growing up, I had only one view, which is I was against the war, and I thought, he could send me off, and I didn't like him. And but you get older and you live life. And I've spent a lot of time in politics, and I actually ran a commission for many years in California. I understand how government works. And once you do understand that, you have a real great appreciation for what he was able to do. And as strong as he was, and as effective a legislator as he was also filled with doubts, and yet he overcame them. He had his doubts and he overcame them, and I think that made him even stronger. So we're missing some people like that. There are some in this town, but we need somebody who's really willing to have the size of a Texan's balls. I mean, we need that. We need that now, and it is uncertain. It is uncertain right now, and I think we're fighting the last battle of the Civil War right now.
Woody, you're from Texas. What were your perceptions of Lyndon Johnson before you played this role, and what are your perceptions of him now after you played the role?
Well, I couldn't help but have my perception colored by Vietnam, as does everybody. But now that I've played him and studied him and listened to countless hours of his phone calls, I have a great deal of esteem for him, and I really admire what he was able to do. And I also think that the Vietnam thing was kind of thrust upon him, and it was a thing he would have loved to get out of. He'd loved to find a way to get a truce. He couldn't get out of it. So, but yeah, I think he was an amazing guy. Very charismatic, very emotional and powerful.
What drives Lyndon Johnson? When you were thinking about this role, what do you think drove this man?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm very self-conscious that she's sitting there with me. well, I just feel like, one of his big phrases was, "You're a can-do man," and he was one of those guys who just really like to get stuff done. Now, I know there's a lot of people in this room who have that same kind of mentality, but he was able to do it in such a forceful way in government that he really accomplished a whole hell of a lot. And so I don't know what drove him, what was the powerful driving force. I don't know what you would say. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, he wanted to be liked. He wanted to be accepted. He had some insecurities. He talked about, he had all, and it's so disturbing, when, Hillary Clinton got vilified for a lot of things. She's a capable person, You just have to give somebody a chance to do the job. And when you have people who know how to do the job, you see amazing things happen. Amazing things. And he was able to accomplish amazing things. But he had insecurity. He was worried. He wasn't, like the Kennedys who had all this, charm and charisma and all that. He had his own kind of charm, but he was worried that he was not living up to that. And yet, if he had the chance, and when he did, boy, did he do what he needed to do. And I got to say that, Woody is incredible in this movie. I mean, he's because in order to, everybody knows what Lyndon Johnson was able to accomplish legislatively. You can see the list there, Medicare, Head Start, Medicaid, Voting Rights Act, which now the Supreme Court gutted. And we're frightened that it could get worse, my only prayer is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg lives forever. The thing that Woody brings to it is humanity. And Lyndon Johnson had humanity. He had a heart and a soul, and yes, he was smart enough to figure out how to work. And he did, like he said, I know how the Congress works. I know how to get things done. And if you don't do it at the right time, you can butcher things. And he knew how to thread the needle. But he also had humanity, and he had a sense of humor, and that's what Woody brings. Just who he is, who Woody is. He brings that to the role without having to do anything because he has that. And so, you can tend to make Lyndon Johnson a caricature, and he's a human being, with insecurities and strengths and all kinds of things. And that's what we was hoping to do, is to give a full-rounded picture of the man.
And nuance, you're alluding to this, but you see the nuance in the character. And when Lyndon Johnson has been depicted other times on film, you don't see the nuance. You see the enigma, but you don't see the nuance. We had the great good fortune of having Woody Harrelson come to the LBJ library to study the part of Lyndon Johnson before he went on to New Orleans for the shoot. What really made you understand this character? Was there one thing that made you think, I got it, I understand who he is now?
Well, I just first want to say that Rob is always so generous and kind to speak highly of my performance, but Rob has been making seminal films for so many years that had such impact on me and so many other people, and he's still firing on all cylinders, and I just and now I have no idea what your question is.
This is a complicated guy, and you did a lot of research around him. Was there something that gave you a clue into his character? Was there one thing where you thought, Yeah, now I get it. I understand him better.
Well, you know, I thought a couple of things really helped a lot. Listening to his phone calls, really, you really got his, I mean, he was, oh my God. I mean, I just can't imagine getting a phone call from him. Whatever he wants, you're going to do. It's guaranteed. He was driven that way, but he also would, you know, and so that side of him, you know, that he had this engine that was always humming, and just, he was always going fully for what he believed in. But he also, you know, when you and I drove out to the ranch, that felt more telling than almost anything, because then you saw this side of him, that beautiful ranch on the, what is it, the Birdhouse River there, and I mean, the setting is, and you saw this side of him that nourished too, you know, that he needed to get out there. And, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what one thing unlocked it, but
He did it, you know, it took him an hour and a half to 2 hours every day to get into makeup. And what Woody would do is he'd listen, you know, he had the, you know, he'd listen to, like you say, all the conversations, all the you know, the tapes, and he would hear that, and I think that helped you. I mean, and he'd come to the set and he'd have, you know, not only just hearing him and hearing his case and all that stuff, but you also said, well, what about this? He said this. Let's see if we can sneak that in or sneak that in. You know, that was cool.
he said a lot of great stuff.
So did
I mean,
you
Gary Harrelson wrote an incredible script, and he also. He also wrote this script that we're doing now, Shock and Awe, that we just wrapped yesterday. He's an incredible writer. Now, of course, he's gone over to television, but we hope to win him back.
Rob, you mentioned the word hero for Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson was certainly not always looked upon heroically. What's changed?
Well, I think, you know, it's interesting how history has a way of, and boy, we just had a week that happened this past week, you know, events, you see somebody's life through a different prism when events around it changes, and so you may think of Lyndon Johnson one way, but in the last week, and I gotta be honest with you, watching this film, I've seen the film many times. Watching it today, just now, after what's happened after the last week, I had a different feeling about the film. You know, here's an interesting thing about movies and about books or any piece of art. They don't ever change. They're there. They never ever change. But the world changes. And as the world changes, you see that thing that's exactly the same differently. And that's fascinating to me. I mean, there's a movie called It's a Wonderful Life. It's, you know, a famous movie, you know. When I saw it as a young person, I thought, wow, that's a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. As I've gotten older, I'm changing, and I have a value of life much greater than when I was young. So the idea of not throwing your life away or what it means, it takes on greater import. So what Lyndon Johnson was able to achieve takes on much greater import now that we see what is unfolding in our country. So he's the same person, but history will view him differently as events unfold. And I think that's what you see happen.
Rob, I can't help but to ask you, we're not only looking at a great actor and a great director, but television icons, Woody from Cheers and Mike Stivic from All in the Family. I can't help but to ask you.
She said Mike Stivic, not me, Ed. People come up to me, does anybody ever still call you me that? I said, you're the second one today.
I can't help but to wonder what the conversation would be like today if Mike Stivic were looking at Archie Bunker across the dining room table. What do you think would happen today between those two characters?
Having the same conversations. I mean, this is what's crazy. Somebody said, you know, could you do a show like All in the Family now because it's so un-PC, right? I said, we've been watching that show for the last year and a half. This man is saying things way, you know, everything that Archie said. And he's saying them on national television, and he's saying them in front of people, and I'm thinking, we're living this show. Unfortunately, well, I don't want to get into this whole thing, but we had, you know, it could still happen. It's the same issues. We're still arguing about the same issues.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to thank you again for a very illuminating conversation and a marvelous film.